Everyone to another episode in our series of Gran Turismo, and today is a special day because after much toil and much hard work I have managed to purchase the Red Bull X2019, which is the elder brother of X2014. These are both hypercars with very different kind of performance. 2014 itself is very fast and 2019 is a bit beyond that. So and the second thing that interests me is that it will be an endurance race as compared to a race with around 10 or 12 laps. So endurance racing is racing where the drivers are tested to the limits. Now in the actual setting it is going to be much different because you are the one who is going to drive the car, and given the kind of the twists and turns and the g-forces that you might be getting through your body, it gets really hard. And there are a lot of races. There is the Le Mans 24 hours, and we also have endurance racing at the Spa-Francorchamps. So both of them are very testing on the drivers, and drivers do take the challenge, and it's kind of a thrilling thing for them. And again, we would try to emulate that today here. It is going to be the first for me, so we will give it a go, and we are going to be racing in the Sardegna track, and I believe the total number of laps will be 30, and we will see how it goes from there and whether we are going to get a pole or not. So let's get started. So the actual backdrop to the race is way more beautiful. It's between the mountains, and you get a very scenic setting. You have a lot of windmills that are in the area, and makes up for a good backdrop. You might have seen that shake of the camera because the camera is right on top of my PS4, and the shake is pretty bad when the steering wheel is snappy or you make a wrong move. I am making a right move here, probably not on this corner but on the stretch. So we have got a very nice exit, and we would probably be racing this is one corner where I like to overtake my opponents, and this is another heavy braking zone, and you could easily lose your grip on the rear tires on this particular turn. And then we are very sharp to the right, and this is where we get the effect from slipstreaming, because this and we have another overtake on our hands, and this is again a main stretch. So the best part is that the best part about this track is you have a lot of turns where you could easily overtake your opponent. You have long stretches where you can pull up from behind your easily pull up behind your opponents, and on this this seems to be the perfect we are going to be making 2 overtakes. Probably not on that stretch, but on the coming one. And the AI is so tough on this one. So basically there is a difference between this kind of racing and a Formula 1 racing. Difference being that in Formula 1 you're allowed to make one overtaking move on your opponent. Whether on this race the opponent can make as many moves on you as he wishes, and there is no penalty on that. In F1 you can't be weaving around when you see that your opponent is behind you and is trying to overtake you. That's totally illegal. So I'm not saying that the AI in Gran Turismo is weaving around, but they make enough number of moves in front of you that it actually breaks your speed and you have to fall back, and falling back is not good. And then you have such twists and turns where you actually lose a lot of speed if you don't know where to brake and how much to brake. So as you could see, I have lost time because I was trying to overtake those three assholes. So you have to find the right balance between overtaking an opponent and maintaining your own speed, so that you don't lose precious time overtaking your next opponent, which is, I believe, 3 seconds ahead of me. So we will be overtaking that, and I have put in my best lap to the previous one. It is 0.191 of a second, so that's 19 thousandths of a second for those who don't know. So it's very fine margins, and we have even finer margins in F1. I have seen margins as close as 1/10 thousandths of a second between the pole and the second place. So it is very, very, very close at most of the times. So we have already gained 1/18 thousandths of a second on the previous laps, sector 1. So basically the lap is divided into 3 sectors. I think that is what applies to most of the tracks, but I think it is how it works here. So we have 3 sectors in a particular track, and you have mini sector times that combined give you, okay, now we are 700. Oh, this AI just made me crash into the wall right there. So basically you combine the mini sector and you get the lap time for a full sector. So if you're doing well in the mini sector, you're definitely going to do well in a full sector. At the same time, if your sector 1 lap times are good and your sector 2 and 3 are messed up, then you're going to lose out on the best time lap. So right now my last lap was 0.718 ahead of what my lap time was, 700th of a second basically. So you have 3 opponents ahead of me. Let's see. And if you drive clean, if you don't bump into any of your opponents, then you get a clean driving bonus. Wow, that was nice. Oh, that was very close. I had one behind me and I had that was a nice overtake. And we are already in the 9th place, and we are only at lap 5 of lap 30, so that's good progress. Sorry about that, I was back COVID today. So the next opponent that is ahead of me is basically 10 seconds, so bear with me. We're going to have to really catch up with him, and that's going to take some time because 10 seconds is quite a long time for those who are into motor racing, and they're all moving at the same speed that you are. They're not standing right where they are, so bridging that gap is going to take a not exactly long time, but a lap or two. But that's okay. You're in an endurance race, so that's the whole point. And then you have these helicopters that are flying right above you. So there is a funny thing that happens in F1. I've seen that in the form of complaints from many of the F1 drivers that the F1 shooting crew is very good at what they do. So basically they get the best shots of the racing cars while they are racing each other, and your commentators are focusing on a certain driver. So if I want to get a camera on Fernando Alonso, then probably my commentator would signal to my camera crew who are up in there with a helicopter and a very good camera module. So they would basically focus around on Fernando and keep the focus on him until they want to move on to a different opponent. And in the process of doing so, the helicopter flies very, very close to the drivers, from the above. And these cars, like I said in the previous videos, they are very high downforce cars, and a little disturbance in the air can actually cause them to lose that downforce. And when the helicopter is flying right above you, it is putting down a lot of vertical thrust to keep itself in the air, and that in turn is creating strong winds at the ground. And when that F1 car passes through that strong wind, it basically loses that downforce for a very small amount of time, and that in turn basically leads to drivers losing their grip on the tarmac, because half of the grip that is generated in an F1 car is through sheer downforce. And when you don't have that, and you have a car that is running at probably 250 miles per hour, that can spell big trouble. But again, that's part of the game. But there are times when in the meaning of getting a good shot, these guys get a little too close to the drivers, and obviously that is very uncomfortable to them. And you might see them complaining on their team radios to the managers that get that effing helicopter out of the way. I'm losing much downforce here. So it's very funny how today's car interact with the elements. They are obviously high performance machines, but they do have the weaknesses. They have their vulnerabilities. This is one big vulnerability that every F1 car has. So again, we are talking about a game here, so that thing is not going to affect us in any ways, but in real life it does. So, again, that view is very good for those who want to get a good capture. So we were speaking, and we got close to our next opponent. So now he is only too far, very, 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 very close. So I'll be overtaking this guy in a lap or two, or I'll try to, if I don't get bumped out of existence. Sorry, that all came out wrong. I absolutely love this track. Not too much complications. The track that I raced on previously was one hell of a track. So straights are those where you get the most advantage out of your car. So I got a bad exit out of this turn. So I didn't brake where I was supposed to. I thought that I could carry that speed. Into the next corner, but I was wrong. So stick to what you've got, and you shall be able to overtake your opponent in no time. So the car that's in front of us has the same color. Oh, I love this cut. That was an awesome overtake right there. So this is one thing that we need to worry about, this refueling. So we'll try to go on the mediums. Ain't this a beauty? So right now we are going to do a small pit stop and we are going to fill up the tank until we are 100%. And this is going to be very interesting. So many of the races do not require you to do a pit stop. Basically it's zero fuel consumption and zero tire wear, but we have both the options enabled, which makes the strategy very interesting. So basically the difference between you losing your position can all come down to a pit stop. So you've got to maintain a very nice lead so that whenever there is a requirement for refueling, you can do that and still be in the lead. But to do that, you have to drive very precisely. So we will be focusing on getting as much lap times out of these tire, and get so ahead of our opponents that it is not at all a concern if you want to take another pit stop or change your tires or refuel yourself. See, the opponent is positioning itself so that I cannot get on the outside of that opponent. The AI is very good on this game. Trust me guys, for those who are into sim racing, you would appreciate that the game designer had put some thought into that, and we have a double overtake there. That was tough. So we've got a very good exit out of this corner and probably would allow me to do an overtake here. Yeah, it does. Alright, so we are in the fourth. And between doing the pit stop and changing your tires, if I can get into the first place and move ahead of my opponent, that would be awesome. So basically in an F1 game, you have drivers who are pushing the cars to the absolute limit, and then you have the team members and the pit crew who have to do their part of the job. So once you move into the pit stop, your pit crew have to change your tires, refuel the car, and this all has to be done in the shortest time possible. So probably the world record right now is a Red Bull, who have done, this guy got a very bad exit. I'm sorry, gotta go. So Red Bull have done the fastest pit stop in F1 till date, and the pit stop time is 1.83 seconds, guys. It's in the blink of an eye. But these guys are the best at what they do. Every team, for that matter, I've seen turnaround times where the car was completely smashed and lost its tires, its tire holding structures, and I've seen teams repair them with 1 hour to go. So I'll give you a classic example. So there was this race in 2020 Hungary, wherein you have qualifying sessions and then you have the race. So during the qualifying went smooth for Red Bull's Max Verstappen, and when we came to the race, there is a formation lap. Before the actual race, there is a formation lap, as in the drivers will stand on the grid as per the position they were in while they qualified. At the end of qualifying, whatever position you're in, you'll be in the same position on the grid, and then you will do a practice start. So practice start is something where basically you get to warm up your tires, because these tires have a working temperature range between which they perform at the best. They grip the track at its most. So that warm up lap is essentially necessary so that you get the best you get the best action when you start your race. So everyone was doing a practice lap, and it was kind of semi-wet to wet that day, because during qualifying there was a lot of rain, so the track was wet, and obviously if the track is wet, there is no traction to work with. So Max Verstappen was warming up his tires, and during I believe 2 corners before the last corner, the Hungary track, Max Verstappen lost his grip, and he basically rammed into the wall, and he broke his suspension. The tires were all over the place. The front 2 tires were gone, the front nose was gone, a lot of things were gone on the car. And Max Verstappen was a title contender at that time. There was a big rivalry going on with Lewis, and Red Bull could not afford a DNF at that point. So Max Verstappen had no chance of recovering from that until and unless the Red Bull did a stellar job at preparing the car. But since it was a crash, and the track was a little unsuitable for driving, the FIA red flagged the race I think it was 1 hour to be precise. The FIA red flagged the race, and all the drivers were on their grid wherever they were meant to be, and it all came down to the quick thinking of the Red Bull team, Christian Horner and the pit crew, who are amazing guys, and they managed to turn around the suspension, change the front nose, which actually does not take that long. All you have to do is screw out the damaged wing and put in a new one. But the suspension is something that is connected to the engine module, that is the power unit, PU, and changing that is the real deal, because it will take hours upon hours to do that, and these guys managed it in an hour. Can you believe that? I'm sorry, I took my ass off the track and bumped. So these guys are the best at what they do. Basically, they will do anything and everything to gain an edge. This year, Red Bull has come into a new kind of a problem, which is giving their drivers a reliable car as compared to a fast car. So, in retrospect, the Ferrari has given their drivers the best car they could and a reliable car. There are no problems with the car. I think a little as far as Carlos Sainz was concerned in the last race, but the reliability issues are far better on the Ferrari than it is in the Red Bull. Mercedes, for some reason, has completely screwed up their advantage at the start of the season. They seem to be way heavier than their speed limit. Sorry, it's not speed limit, it's weight limit. So there is a designated weight limit that the car have, and since they are aerodynamic, every bit of weight can alter a car's performance. right in terms of the maximum speed that it can attain on the corners, and the overall aerodynamic performance. So Mercedes have accepted that there is a problem. They have a lot of issue with porpoising, and porpoising means that these cars are, for the season, the cars have been designed in such a way that the majority of downforce that you're going to get on this car is through it is basically going to be through the underside of your floor. In short, it's called a ground effect car. So basically you have tunnels that are at the bottom of the car that channel the air. The front wing basically channel the air right underneath the floor, and then the air goes out through the venturi tunnels, and that sucks the air to the ground. Ground effect was something that the Formula 1 worked with in the 1980s, and a bit beyond that. The Lotus was the first car that was the best at making use of the ground effect, and it proved to be a championship winner that year. So they're making the use of the ground effect again. Primary reason being that they want to eliminate the dirty air that comes out from behind the cars, and dirty air in short affects all the drivers that are behind one another. As soon as if I am a driver in an F1 car and I'm trying to get behind another opponent to get a slipstream and eventually overtake the guy, as soon as I'm within 500th of a second behind the guy in front, the car in front is throwing out so much dirty air that I might lose my downforce to as much as 40%, and that's a huge number. So this in turn did not promote overtaking. The guys behind would lose. Until you're in a DRS range, it would be very difficult. So FIA has been giving it consideration for the longest time, and this has been in the planner since 2019, but they have finally designed the F1 car which can work with the ground effect force, and that is the theme for this season. And ground effect comes with its own fair share of troubles. Teams did not expect that. They were all given the basic design and told to create car designs that that can work with that particular effect. But when the cars went out for testing in Barcelona and then subsequently in Bahrain, there was a big problem, because they were having this issue where the car was just jumping up and down on the track. Wherever there was a straight and you required the maximum downforce, the car was being sucked to the ground more than it should. And what happens with this ground effect cars is, when the car is, the air is basically being flown on the underbelly of the car, and when you're on the straight, your car is getting more downforce from the top. There is more pressure from the top, and the suspension is being squeezed, so to speak, and your car's underside is basically rubbing against the tarmac. So once it is touching the tarmac, you're basically breaking the airflow on the underneath, and as soon as the airflow underneath the car breaks, you're going to cut that air off, and when you cut that air off, you're going to lose your downforce for a split second, and during that time your suspension would basically jump back to its original position, uncompressed position, and then your car is going up. As soon as it came down, it is being pushed up, and again once it's pushed up, the airflow reconnects, and again you have maximum downforce, and holy shit. Now it is the second pit stop that we are going through. So pit stop is very crucial to a race. I think it is the last pit stop that we would have to go through. And see, these guys are really quick. And on F1 cars, you have drivers who are getting the tire change and the fuel replenished. But here, the tire change is done first, and we are off to racing. So this time we'll be a little careful. Last time I did not have my eyes on the road, and now we are first. So like I told you, if you make enough lap, if you make enough distance between you and your opponent, you're going to be in the first, even after you make the pit stop. So this is what all the teams aim for, so that they don't have to fight someone ahead of them all over again. So basically, pit stop can decide your entire race for you. You can push as hard as you want, but if the pit crew screws it up, well, your race is done. So an interesting case in point is the Monaco Grand Prix of 2021. So basically, in the Monaco Grand Prix, the things were going good. Red Bull was basically in an advantageous position in that race. Mercedes was not. Their qualifying did not went well. I believe Bottas was the one who finished on pole. He did very well as compared to Lewis Hamilton, he was sadly in 7th or 8th, I think. So what happened during the race is that there was a regular time for a pit stop. The driver came in to the pit, and when they started taking off his tires, they realized that they are not able to do so. They kept trying so many times, but the wheel gun would simply not be able to take the wheel screw apart. And they were confused, and eventually they had to give up doing it altogether, and due to that single thing, the tires could not be changed, and Valtteri Bottas' race was basically over. He had to get out of the car and get into his room. So eventually when they went back to their bases and did an analysis of what the hell happened to their car, they found out that the wheel nut basically has a lot of grooves in it, to which your wheel machine basically hugs that contour and rotates anti-clockwise and takes the tire off. But what happened in Valtteri Bottas' case is that when they tried to unscrew the wheel, the pit crew probably, when they put their wheel gun inside the tire to get the screw out, they did it at a slightly wrong angle, and that basically it basically took off those grooves and made that wheel nut slick instead of grooved. That is the best way that I can put it with my English. Okay, so the right word is thread, the wheel thread. The wheel thread gone off when the pit crew, tried to unscrew the wheel, and that basically left the wheel screw all slick and with no grip. So this is something that no one anticipates in reality. You have to deal with it as in when it happens. You can't simulate this, because in normal circumstances these things would not happen. During a race, there are so much stresses on the tire to the entire frame of the car, for that matter. So anything can go off, anything can get worn at any point, and the car can burst into flames and whatnot. We see that a lot of times. You might suddenly lock up in a corner and go flying into the barriers. But this is all part of the game. The uncertain nature of the race is what makes it interesting. So, for example, in the 2022 season, the end of the season, we had this race in Abu Dhabi, wherein everything was going well for the Mercedes until Nicolas Latifi, you know, had an interest in talking with the barriers. Basically, he rammed his car into the barriers at the penultimate turn, the turn before that actually, and basically ruined his whole car. And the conditions were so bad that the FIA had to red flag the race. And red flags can be bad for the guy who is up in the front, and it could be a boon for the guy who's in the second. So this is again where strategy had done its part too. So basically, Mercedes, because there was not much gap between the first and second, Mercedes decided to not pit their champion. Red Bull had nothing to lose. Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton were, oh boy, we are far ahead of the team. So Max Verstappen had nothing to lose because he and Lewis were at the same number of points by the last race. So Max Verstappen could take a chance and Lewis could not do it. Lewis had basically everything to lose and Max had everything to gain. So Max took a pit stop, put himself on the soft tire, which are the fastest among the soft, hard and medium, while Mercedes decided that, let the safety car play out. And we were towards the end of the race, so we only had two laps left, I think. And they decided that the safety car would be there long enough, and the nature of the crash that Latifi was involved in was so bad that they could afford to wait it out and basically be behind the safety car till the end of the race, and Lewis could be world champion for the 8th time. So they decided to take that risk, and they opted to stay out. Now, this is where things get really interesting, because like all the teams managers, teams principals, they all want their team to win the race no matter what happens, and this is where it is so cutthroat and competitive. So basically, Christian Horner called up the FIA radio, spoke to Michael Massey, and I told Michael Massey that, let the guys race, end the safety car right now. Why do you need to why do you need to keep it on till the end? Let them have a race for the last lap. And again, it all comes down to the thinking of Michael Massey. As per the rules and regulation, it should not have happened, but Michael Massey allowed the racing for one final lap. And now Lewis was in big trouble because he was on hards, which were probably 14 or 15 laps old. And then we have Max Verstappen, who is, oh wow, we are lapping the cars which are right at the back. So now we have Max Verstappen, who is on a very fresh set of tires, hardly used even for a lap. And then we have Lewis on a set of 15 lap old tires. So Lewis would definitely have a way better grip than Max would. And Max took total advantage of that. When the safety car pitted, Michael Massey gave the go ahead for the race to resume at the end of the safety car going in, and Max employed this tactic which is employing on this month as well. So basically, he was right with Lewis. He should ideally be behind the rear wing of Lewis Hamilton. His car cannot be at the same point of distance as Lewis. He cannot be right alongside Lewis. Sorry, I did not put it that way. So he was right alongside Lewis, and as soon as the race went off, Lewis was a sitting duck basically, because there was nothing that Lewis could do. He did not have traction, his tires were old, and he did not have the grip. So even then Lewis Lewis pushed ahead and he was able to overtake Max for the first two corners, but it was eventually going to play out in Max's hands because obviously he was on the soft tire. So by turn 3 or turn 4, Max literally overtook Lewis, and from there onwards the race was basically for Max to win. Lewis tried protesting to the Toto Wolff protested to the FIA that it's not fair, for which Michael Masi said this golden words: Toto, yes, it's motor racing. That would have hurt. So again, there are a lot of human factors, and then there are a lot of mechanical factors which are involved in the game, which makes the world of Formula One uncertain. Anything can happen at any point. You could get super lucky, and then you could get super unlucky. Nothing that is in our hands, but these teams try that, you can keep the unknowns to a minimum, because the more unknowns there are, the more challenging it is for them to make the drivers race to win. So that ended up in Lewis losing his 8th World Championship and Max getting his first. So now he's the current reigning World Champion, and I won't say luckily for him, but Mercedes is not in the top right now, given the kind of problems that they have with porpoising, the one that we were discussing before. His car is bouncing around so a lot on the straights that he is losing significant amount of downforce, and the fact that Lewis, he doesn't have a good car, and obviously he's not at the first, so he does not have an advantage in as far as points are concerned. They do have advantage. Verstappen won one race out of the 3 that has happened so far, but again the race that so the race that he has won so far is just the one in Bahrain. No, not the Bahrain one, in Saudi Arabia. So he does not have much of a lead, but if Mercedes try to pull through, and if they pull through, they should be able to join the race with Ferraris, Red Bulls, and it would be a 3-way race. So he would obviously be losing time, as you would see in the top timer right there. So basically on this race, the one that just happened in Australia, so Mercedes has done an interesting job in trying to find out why they're losing the performance. They know that they are overweight the limit, they are above the limit by around 10 kilos. But again, they would definitely be doing something about it, and I'll tell you why. In qualifying, Lewis had this device which was attached on the belly of his car. Whoa. We have a pit stop. So we could basically elect to refuel our car. Okay, but I would try to do a full refuel. I don't think it should matter. Okay, so we have refueled our car for 3 laps. So this is very interesting. The way they go about refueling is what interests me, and the graphic is obviously very nice. This car is a beauty of a car. It's a monster. So we have very interesting race going on between the Max and Charles Leclerc, between Max and Charles Leclerc, between Red Bull and Ferrari. What the hell was that? So you would have seen this guy waving a blue flag, and the blue flag is being waved because I am the leader and I have already lapped these guys. So they are supposed to give me space, which they don't. So this rule applies in Formula 1 as well as in Gran Turismo, of course, that you need to give. See, we are already setting lap times because I am on the softer tires, and soft tires are the fastest. So if I get my act together, I might be able to pull out the fastest lap too. I should be able to. Wow, we have pulled 500th of a second. Between the last lap and the first. So when you're going out of a tight corner, you need to be very smooth on the throttle so that you don't have wheel spin. You need to turn your steering wheel in such a manner that you get the maximum grip. So it's 702.702 seconds off the last lap. So let's try to set another fast lap here for the last lap, just for my sake. Let's see if the technique I'm employing is, yep, it's definitely working. So we are 7/10,000ths of a second ahead of our previous sector time in sector 1. So we are going to be able to see if we can put together right. So we are through the final turn of the final lap. I hope you enjoyed this race, and do subscribe and like this video if you love this race, and I'll be seeing you around.